Hi everyone. Really excited to be here. There was a long period of time during COVID that I was unable to speak in front of audience, and I really like to speak in front of audience and with the audience. And the reason is that I actually have two very strong personalities. One of them is an entrepreneur. I build startups, and I left Waze the day after the acquisition so I can build more startups. But there is another strong personality in me of being a teacher, and I would like to share what I know, the know-how, the experience, and this is in order to hopefully help you to become better in what you are doing. And so I am equally rewarded if I build stuff myself or I guide someone to build it. And because of that, I really like those presentations. Because of that, I wrote a book. Because of that, I go to many entrepreneurship conferences and teach at universities, because I think that at the end of the day, innovation and entrepreneurs are going to change the world. And I'll discuss that when I speak about disruption. But let me start this noon session with a startup journey, right? So what does it mean to build a new startup from scratch? Any entrepreneurs in here? Okay, so this might be very relevant for you, this part. And later on, we'll discuss innovation and disruption, and this is mainly focused on existing corporates and businesses, and what does it mean for them. By the way, this is my email. No? Okay. This is my email, and I do answer all of my emails. Back to travel. I travel a lot. I have long times at airplanes, and I do answer all of them. So if you will send me an email, I will answer. Not necessarily today, but I will definitely answer that. And you might not even like the answer, but I still answer it. So usually, all the entrepreneurship stories start with a very strong emotional engagement. You run into something that you really like and you tell yourself, this is how things should be done, right? Or you run into something that you really hate and you get frustrated and you tell yourself, no, I have to change that. So I do hate traffic jams, right? And then you start to think about it and you start to dream about it and you build the passion until you are willing to sacrifice everything else, until you are willing to make the leap of faith and go and do that. Now, this is going to be a roller coaster journey. I'll speak about this journey multiple times, but it's a roller coaster journeys with ups and downs and ups and downs. And look, all the businesses in the world have ups and downs, right? So today, everyone actually feeling the pressure on interest rate, on inflation, on stock market is going down, on supply chain. Everyone feels the downside as well, but the frequency of those in building a startup is way higher. That might be a few times a day that you're going up and down, right? I think that I owe the best quote to Ben Horowitz. Ben Horowitz is one of the founders of a venture capital firm, Andreessen Horowitz. And before that, he used to be a CEO of a startup. And he was asked whether or not he was sleeping well at night as a CEO of a startup. And he said, oh yeah, I slept like a baby. I woke up every 2 hours and cried. And that's really the journey. So for a second, I want you to think of building a startup, going into this journey, in particular at the beginning, exactly like falling in love, right? So you think of many ideas, and eventually there is one that you tell yourself, this is what I'm going to do. You go to many dates, and eventually there is one that you tell yourself, she is the one. Now, at the beginning, you only want to spend time with your date. You don't care about the rest of the world. You're starting to think about your new idea or your new ventures from multiple perspectives. This is the problem I'm going to address, and this is how the solution looks like, and this is what I'm going to do tomorrow morning, and a year from now, and so forth, until you feel confident enough. And then you go and tell your friends, this is what I'm going to do. Now, the first reaction is always the same. This will never work. And these are the nice guys, right? The less nicer guys, they will tell you, this is the stupidest idea that I ever heard. And trust me, I heard that. You take your date for the first time to meet your friend, and they're saying, she's not for you. This is where you disengage from your friends. So the good news is that you are in love and you don't listen to anyone else. The bad news is that you are in love and you don't listen to anyone else. But the reality is that you have to be in love in order to go into this journey, because this journey requires amount of commitment and passion and sacrificing and so many things that you have to be in love in order to go and become successful in this journey. Now for me, if you want to build a new venture, a new startup, I would say start with the problem. Find a problem. A big problem, something that is actually worth solving, something that the world will become a better place if you solve that. And then the next phase that you want to do is ask yourself, so who has this problem? Now, if you happen to be the only person on the planet with this problem, then I would say go to a shrink. It's cheaper, faster, easier than building a startup. But if a lot of people actually have this problem, go and speak with those people that you think that they actually have this problem and understand their perception of the problem. And the reason that I say that is that people are different. They might have different perceptions of the problem. Now, once you have heard the perception of the problem of other people, only then go and build the solution. Now, if you follow this path and your solution works, it's actually guaranteed that you're going to be successful. If you start with the solution, you might end up by building something that no one cares, and this is really frustrating. A lot of entrepreneurs that I met before, I speak with many entrepreneurs that they start up fail, and I hear multiple perspectives. One of them that I heard quite often is that no one cared. We built something and there was no one need that. And that's really frustrating. Now, when I say fall in love with the problem, it's really, there are two aspects of it, right? It increases the likelihood of being successful for multiple reasons. Number one, you know exactly what you're building. Number two, you have a North Star. You have something that always remained the objectives of the company. When we started, our North Star was to help drivers to avoid traffic jams. That was from the first day until now, right? Forever. And the beauty of that is that it helps to align the entire company, reduce the number of mistakes that you're going to do throughout the journey, and essentially increase the likelihood of being successful. But it's also make the story so much easier to sell to users, to sell to customers, to sell to investors, to sell to everyone. Because if you are focusing on the solution, your story would sound like, my company is building a next generation GPS that is AI-based and crowdsource-based, and therefore better, right? This is a solution-based story. By the way, it's 100% accurate to what Wes was doing. But if I will tell you, I'm going to help you to avoid traffic jams, all of a sudden you care. On the first story, you don't care. The second story, when you discuss problem or when you discuss the user, they care. And the result is that the story is so much easier to tell. Now, if you want to think about whether or not the problem you're trying to address is big enough, think of this matrix, right? So there is frequency of use or the value on one X and the total addressable market on the other one. Now, obviously, if you have a lot of users and high value, then this is winner, no problem, right? And on the contrary, if you have very low addressable market and you don't create value, even for those you don't create value, these are losers. The problem is that most of the ventures that you heard of, most of the thoughts that you have, most of the ideas are either niche players or dreams and nightmares, right? And dreams and nightmares, they have very large addressable market, but not enough value to make it successful. The niche is very, very important. There are you create a lot of value there, maybe to a limited number of customers, but you create a lot of value there. So at the end of the day, you're looking for the value creation. If this is a winner, then obviously you should quit whatever you're doing today and go and do that. If this is a niche, then it's still very, very interesting. If you want to go into the journey of nightmares, it is going to be a nightmare. You might be successful and you might be very successful, but the journey is going to be a nightmare. So the good thing is that when you are in love, you're ready to make the leap of faith. You're ready to leave everything that you have done. You're ready to quit your job, right? In a lot of cases, I would hear entrepreneurs telling me, I'm still working on my previous place, but my night work is actually this, and I would like to raise capital for that. And I will tell them, look, right now you have told me that you are not in love yet because you haven't quit your own job. You're not willing to sacrifice. Then why do you think investor is going to invest in that? But the good news is that then you have indefinite amount of power. You can climb any mountain. You are actually ready to go into this journey. And this is the phase that you actually need to make the leap of faith and go and start your journey. Now, this is going to be a journey of failures. Very painful one, a journey of failures. And one of the reasons is that it's really simple to understand, right? We're trying to build something new. No one did that before, right? So we think we know exactly what we are doing, but we don't. So we try. And we go there with the conviction that this is going to work, and it doesn't. And we need to make another experiment and another experiment. And this is how it looks like, right? Because this is the journey of failures. Now, there are two immediate conclusions if you think about it. One is, if you're afraid to fail, then in reality you already failed because you're not going to try. Albert Einstein used to say that if you haven't failed, that's because you haven't tried new things before. If you will try new things, you will fail. Now, this failure is extremely important. Michael Jordan said that I failed so many times, and this is what made me successful. The failure is part of the journey, and it's actually part of the personal learning that you learn that if you fail, you get up, you continue your journey, you're actually stronger than before because you're not afraid from the next failure. The second conclusion that is equally important is you need to fail fast. Because when you fail fast, you actually have enough time to make another experiment and another experiment and another experiment. So the faster that you decide that you're gonna take your product to the market, and in many cases I would hear people telling me, you know what, my product is not ready yet. And I would say, it will never be ready if you don't get the feedbacks from the users. If you want it to evolve faster, you need to get it out faster, even if you are embarrassed with the quality of the product for now. And so essentially, and this is really critical, because then you get feedback, and then you have time to fix that, and another time, another iteration, another iteration, another iteration. Becoming good enough is a journey. It's not one time. It's not that you plan for that. It's that you plan for a journey of failures, and eventually at the end of it, you will be good enough. And it's a long journey. People don't realize how long it is, but it's really a long journey. And the longest part of it is the desert of no traction, right? Whatever you do, you don't see any progress, right? So imagine that you're in the middle of the desert and there's only sand around you. You walk all day, and there is still only sand around you. You do make progress, but you don't see that. You go to sleep at night, you wake up in the morning, still only sand around you. You are making baby steps progress, but it's a long period of time. During this period of time, this is where there are two things that you really need in order to go through this journey. One is that you're in love with the problem, that you have this North Star that tells you, this is my mission in life. This is what I'm going to do. I don't care about anything else. This is exactly what I'm going to do. The other one is that you have the team to support you. If you had these two, you are very likely to cross the desert. If you don't have these two, you're very likely to die in this desert, which, by the way, most of the startups do die in this desert. And they do die because they don't figure out product market fit. Product market fit essentially is about creating value. When your product fits the market, that means that you're creating value to your users or to your customers, and this is where you're on a path of being successful. If you don't figure out product market fit, you will die. As simple as that. If you do, you are going to be successful. Now, if this is a big problem, you're going to be very successful. If it's a smaller problem, you're going to be less successful, but you will be successful. The journey of entrepreneurship is about value creation, and therefore making an impact, changing the world and everything. But the basic of everything is value creation. Now, in reality, you never heard of a startup that did not figure out product market fit. They died. You never heard of them. But if you think about companies that did, and for a second I want you to think of all the applications that you're using every day on your smartphone, right? So Google, Waze, WhatsApp, Netflix, Uber, whatever it is. And ask yourself, what is the difference between the application that I'm using today and the first time that you have used it? And the answer is that there is no difference. We are searching Google today the same way that we searched Google for the first time. We are using Waze today or Netflix or whatever the same way that we did it for the first time. So once you figure out product market fit, you don't change that anymore. The value proposition, the value creation does not change anymore. Everything in the back end does change. But the user, the creation of the value to the customers does not change. Now, for most of those companies, it was many years to get to this phase of product market fit. It was 3.5 years for Waze. It was 3 years for WhatsApp. It was 5 years for Microsoft. It was 10 years for Netflix. Netflix, the way that we know it, started in 2008. But the company started in 1998 doing something completely different that was not good enough. And it was a journey for them until they figure out that this is what they're going to do. So perhaps with figuring out about or thinking of innovation, thinking about new product, whether or not this is a new product of an existing business or a new product that is also a new startup, the first part of your journey is always about figuring out product market fit. If you don't, you will die. If you do, then you buy yourself a ticket to the next part of the journey. We will speak about it in a second. So I want to share with you a little bit the Waze journey. And if you are using Waze, raise your hand. Now this is how valuable it become to many places, because people will tell me I cannot even leave the house without Waze. And to a certain extent, I would say what is more important for us is not the avoidance of the traffic jams anymore. It's actually knowing exactly how long it's going to take us, right? So we can plan. And I arrived last night at the airport, and my wife was already here, and I get into the car, and the Waze say that we are going to arrive at 9:08, and we arrived at 9:10, 9:09 or 9:10, and that's it, right? And the fact that I can send a message to my wife telling her that I will be at the hotel at 9:10 is a big difference in the way that we conduct business. And this is way bigger impact than helping people to save 10 minutes on their route. Even though that if you think about it, every person, every day, 10 minutes is actually a lot of time that we create, that we help people. But the general impact turns out to be way bigger. Now, if I would have a time machine, and I will come here, and you will come here as well in 2007, and I will tell you, this is what I'm going to build, you will tell me this will never work, right? Because Waze has a magic in it. And the magic is that we, the drivers, create all the content for the rest of the drivers that is being used by the application. So essentially, red social de conductores para conductores. And that's the important part of it, right? So we, the drivers, help the rest of the drivers. Now, when I said all the content, not just traffic jams and speed traps, that's obvious. The map itself. So when we started, that was the map of Tel Aviv. Blank page. There was absolutely nothing on the map. And when the first driver drove, we collected the GPS data from the device, and if we take this GPS data and draw that on the blank page, this is what we're going to get. Now, if we take that from a lot of drivers, we are starting to get something that looks like a map, right? If I will tell you that it's a traffic circle in the middle, it looks like a traffic circle, and it is a traffic circle, right? And if I would ask you, can you tell the difference between a main road and a street? You will tell me, okay, you know what, this is Main Street, and this is not, right? It's easy to see. If there is an intersection that no one is making left turn, then no left turn is allowed, right? If there is a road that there are 100 people going into one direction and there is no one else coming the other direction, that will be one-way street, right? Now, if there is a road that there are 100 people going into one direction and there are only 2 coming the other direction, this is one-way street in Tel Aviv. And in reality, if you have computer science background, you would know that if I can describe something, we can build it. And this is exactly what we did. We built a system that takes all of this data and creates the map. Now, initially, the map is incomplete, but then we enabled map editing tools that people can provide us with street names and house numbers and points of interest. And it was a short while that the map became good enough in very populated area. And obviously, in rural area, it took way longer, sometimes never. Now, at this phase, if we will have someone that is driving slow, then we can figure out that there is a traffic jam here. And if we have a lot of drivers all over, then we can figure out where all traffic jams are and actually route people to avoid them. And this is the magic of Waze. Now, if on top of that you add speed cams, which is really important, right? There was one guy that told me that he owes me thousands of dollars in speeding ticket because this is what I saved him. But the magic is in the fact that we are all creating the data for us. What we are seeing in this video is how the map was created in a few places in Eastern Europe. And you can see the date beginning of 2010. By the way, before that, Waze was not good enough, and it was only in Israel. It will actually zoom in into the center area. This is Bratislava. And the interesting part is that it was about 6 months for the map to become good enough. Now, good enough and free wins the market. No one can compete with that. The challenge, and by the way, this video goes to multiple cities. We are not going to review them. The challenge, however, is very different, right? It was actually becoming good enough in a very few places. So I'm going to take you through the beginning of Waze, and we started in 2007 with the approach that this is what we're going to do. And we realized, by the way, the first version of Waze was running on a PDA. Remember? Long time ago, there were dinosaurs, and then PDA, and then Nokia phones, and today we all have iPhones and Android, right? This long time ago is only 15 years. 2007, Waze was running on a PDA. 15 years. If I would have this time machine, and I will send you back to 2007, I'm going to take away your iPhone, I'm going to take away Facebook, Waze, WhatsApp, Uber, Netflix, everything. Not sure that you will survive. Actually, I look at the people here, most of us are actually old enough to survive. We know how it was before. But if I will have the same dialogue with a class of students, they wouldn't. Now, start to think about it. What does it mean about the next 15 years? The pace of innovation is increasing, right? So the changes in the last 15 years, the next 15 years is going to be even more dramatic, way beyond our ability to imagine. And so 2007, I go to, we were 3 founders, and I go to raise capital from venture capitals, and they say no, and no, and no, and no. It was 6 months of of hearing no time after time until we finally raised capital at the beginning of 2008. And we started the journey by building the first real-time product running on a Nokia phone, because that was the smartphone of the time. And we launched the product in Israel at the beginning of 2009, and it was actually pretty good. It was pretty good. In Tel Aviv, it was actually very accurate, both in terms of the traffic and the prediction of the time of arrival, and people loved that. And we said, okay, if it's working in Israel, it should be working everywhere, right? And so at the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, we made Waze available everywhere. Now, the nature of the beast of traffic jams is the same. Everyone hates traffic jams. Every major city in the world experiences traffic jams. You might be very unique because yours are way worse than everyone else. Actually, not everyone else, but you are same order of magnitude of Sao Paulo or Cairo or Mumbai. But definitely, if there was a podium of world class of competing how severe traffic jams are, you are going to be on the podium. And so, understanding that the problem is the same for everyone, we said it's have to work everywhere, right? Remember this slide? It was not good enough in Mexico. It was not good enough in the US. It was not good enough in Brazil. It was not good enough in Western Europe. It was actually good enough in 4 places, in Czech Republic, Slovakia, Latvia, and Ecuador, and that's it. Rest of the world, it was not good enough. And so people really like the story. We are going to help drivers to avoid traffic jams. Everyone wants that, right? Everyone wants that. So they would download the app, they will try the app, and it was not good enough. It wouldn't even find their house. Or they will give them an awkward route going from their home to the office, right? Something that they actually know how to do every day. And they would give up. And we saw that, and we said, okay, wait a minute, it doesn't work. Let's find out what doesn't work. So we spoke with drivers. They told us what doesn't work. We went back into the engineering room, and we built the next version that solves everything that they have told us. And we know that this is it, and it's not. So we're doing that all over again, right? So we speak with the drivers, they tell us what doesn't work, we go and fix it, we go with the conviction that now it has to work, and it's not. Another iteration, whole year of iterations until it's starting to become good enough. This is a journey of failures, right? Every time you go with the conviction that this time it's going to work. And it's not, and you do it all over again, and again, and again. It was only at the end of 2010 that it's starting to become good enough and in multiple places, right? So in the US, that was one city at the time, Los Angeles first, and then San Francisco, and Washington, D.C., and Atlanta, and New York, and Chicago, one metropolitan after the other. Here in Latin America, it was actually Chile first, and then Colombia, and then Brazil, and then Mexico, and then one country after the other. Part of it, by the way, had to do with the cost of data, right? So if data was expensive, people would avoid to use Waze because it consumes data. And as soon as data become less expensive, then they would say traffic versus not expensive. I'm going to use Waze in order to avoid traffic. 2011 was actually the year that everything changed. And then it was 2012 that Waze was actually growing faster than the entire industry combined. So you take all navigation devices and all in-car navigation systems and all navigation apps. Waze was outgrowing all of them together. It was 2013 that Google came with the approach to acquire us, and we said yes. And I left the day after I left so I can build more startups. A lot of people often ask me whether or not it was the right decision to sell. And I would say, look, at the end of the day, when you have your own journey, there are right decisions or no decisions. Because when you make a decision, you don't know what would have happened if you will choose a different path. So if you would ask me whether or not Waze today would be worth way more than $1.1 billion that it was sold back then, oh, absolutely yes. But the key question is, would it get to where it was today without Google? That we don't know. And this is really important to remember, right? When you make a decision, by definition, it is the right decision. If you are looking for tools, in many cases what we are looking for, we know what is the right decision. We are looking for confirmation. So when I was young, one day I came to my dad and I said, look, I have these two alternatives and I don't know which one to choose. So he reached out to his pocket, get a coin out and said, I'm gonna flip the coin. And before the coin drops, you're gonna make the call. Because we know, we are looking for confirmation. Now the good news is that the coin will drop. No doubt about that. We do need confirmation. Confirmation is easy. Make a decision. Make decisions about your own life. Make decisions that you're responsible to make. Don't hesitate. When you hesitate, when you wait, when you don't make decisions with conviction, you actually hurt the entire organization. The entire dependent on you making that decision. So what does it mean to build a unicorn or a successful startup or successful product or successful journey? And at the end of the day, it's really simple. All we need is to align all those stars, right? So we need product market fit. So the product is actually used and needed. We need to figure out that the market is large enough, right? If it's a small market, then maybe no one cares. We need to figure out the business model, lifetime value of a customer or user. We need to understand how to grow. So we can make money out of a single user. Now we need a lot of users in order to actually make money. So figuring out business model, figuring out growth are critical. And then in many cases, when you look back, you will see that there is sort of an X factor that could be about simplicity, could be about ease of use, could be about it looks nice, could be about something that does not have direct or measurable impact. But when you look at all the successful ones, then you see that they have something like that. The product is likable. Now the problem is when you start your journey, all those stars are spread all over. And you need to deal with them one by one. Because if you try to move all the stars concurrently, you will not even understand what doesn't work. You need to deal with them one by one. And you need to start with product market fit. Because if you don't have product market fit and you figure out growth, you're going to bring a lot of users and they will churn. They will immediately leave because there is no value for them. You will be spending tons of money on marketing with zero impact on usage. And I'll speak about that in a second. Now, for all the startups in the world, the first 7 years actually looks exactly the same. You start with product market fit. And then you go to those journeys as well, right? So not necessarily globalization, right? If you will tell me I'm starting in San Francisco and the US market is big enough for me, then you don't really care about globalization. Maybe you would care about globalization way later. But you will need to figure out how do you make money, and you will need to figure out how do you bring users. Each one of those is going to be a journey of failures. Now, which one to start with? To a certain extent, I would say it's actually not up to you. It's up to the product. If the product has high frequency of use, then go with growth first and not monetization. If the product has low frequency of use, then go with monetization first and not growth. And the reason is that word of mouth. High frequency of use means that eventually people are going to hear about your product from other people. If I would ask the audience here, how did you hear about Waze? Most people would say, someone told me. That's it, someone told me. That's because that someone was actually using Waze multiple times. And there was a lot of opportunity for that someone to tell someone else. And so if you have high frequency of use, your order of building the startup is product market fit first, then growth, then monetization. If, however, you have low frequency of use, let's say that you're doing tax returns, which is once a year, then you cannot rely on word of mouth. And you essentially need to make money from every single user. So you will basically go and say product market first, then monetization, and in many cases they will be actually combined because the product is only valuable if people are willing to pay for that, and then you'll figure out growth. And so, but this is always going to be the first 7 years. Now you think about Google and you ask yourself, when Google actually built their next product? Their next product was actually Gmail. It was 7 years after the search. This is where it takes you this time of journey to actually make sure that you are on the right path of making an impact. And this is if you're extremely successful. Occasionally, and I don't want to discourage people, so I don't tell them that it's actually 10 years, but it is. Now, I want you to think for a second of many of the tech giants like Facebook and Tesla and Google and Amazon and Netflix. And these are all, by the way, they are somewhere around 25 years old. Most of them. Facebook is actually younger, or even younger, right? Shopify and Stripe and Airbnb. And I want you to ask you, so you know, how much of their value was created, and value, I mean the aggregated market capitalization of them, was created in their first 10 years versus the rest of the journey. Now, the rest of the journey in the case of Tesla is less than 10 years. In the case of Netflix or Google, it's actually more, or Amazon, it's more, but not a lot more, right? First 10 years, rest of the journey. And a lot of people will tell me it's probably the first of 10 years was the most significant one. 4%. 4% of the value was created in the first 10 years. Because what really happened in the first 10 years is that they figure out product market fit, they figure out the business model, they figure out growth, and now it's time to actually start to enjoy all that and take off. And so most of the value was created later for all of those companies. So this presentation is interesting because I initially built it for an entrepreneurship class that I was teaching at the IDC college or university in Herzliya in Israel. And over the years, people came to me and say, look, that was the most important slide that we had throughout the entire year. And so if you're going to take one thing out of today, it's this slide. Who are your users and what is their perception of the problem? The second that you stop thinking about that, you're starting to build things that they don't care. And when you build things that they don't care, there is someone else that's building stuff that they do care. And they're the ones that are going to win the market. Now this is dramatic, right? Because when you start to think that everything that you are building is correct, unless you are Steve Jobs, you're wrong. Make your mistakes fast, right? We mentioned that in the journey of failures. This is the way for us to actually move faster by making our mistakes fast. But I want you to think of the biggest enemy of good enough is perfect. You don't need to be perfect in order to win the market. If you will be good enough, you will win the market. Now, in order for you to become good enough, you need to start with not good enough and listen to your users, right? So you start with something that is not good enough, You listen to your users, you improve and improve and improve and improve and improve until you become good enough, and you keep on improving until you become nearly perfect. Now, the most important thing is that people don't like changes. If you are good enough, they are not going to replace you. And that's really important to realize. Even if I have if someone will build a better navigation system than Waze, and by the way, there is here technology, here we go, is actually better than Waze in navigating, not necessarily in traffic, but in order for you to switch from someone that is good enough and free to something else, it's not going to happen. It's simply not going to happen. People will not change something that is good enough for them. Fall in love with the problem, not the solution. We mentioned that. Focus. Look, throughout the Waze years, there were a lot of people, once we started to have some traction, every day I would hear, why don't you build that for truck drivers? Why don't you do that? But you're not supporting buses, or you're not supporting taxi drivers. You can do that for bicycle riders. Actually, yes, we can. You can do that for skiers. By the way, I'm an avid skier and an avid bicycle rider, so obviously I would be enjoying that. But the focus remains, we are helping drivers to avoid traffic jams every day. And by every day means that we are on their commute route. When they're going to the office, we are there to help them. And in order to remain focused on that, we basically need to say no to everything else. Really easy to lose focus. So focus is not about what we are doing. It's about what we are not doing. These are the hard decisions, to say no to everything else so you can remain focused and going into the direction that you want to go. Now, the last one turns out to be very interesting because I mentioned earlier, I spoke with many entrepreneurs, and for those that their startup failed, I asked them why. What happened? And about half said the team was not right. So I kept on asking, okay, what do you mean the team was not right? And they told me, we had this guy not good enough, or the CTO was responsible to build an engineering team and he was unable to recruit anyone. So not good enough was one reason. Another reason that I heard quite often was we had communication issues, something that I actually called ego management issues. And then I asked them the most interesting question. When did you know that the team was not good, that the team is not right? All of them knew within the first month. First month, all of them knew. There was one guy that told me before we even started. So he said, wait a minute. If you knew that the team is not right and you did not do anything, the problem was not that the team was not right. The problem was that the CEO did not make hard decisions. Making easy decisions is easy. Making hard decisions is hard. This is why in small organizations, everyone is looking up to the CEO to make the hard decisions. If the CEO doesn't make that decision, there is a problem, an ongoing problem that will last forever. The reality is that if there is someone that does not fit into the team, everyone knows. Everyone knows, and CEO doesn't do anything. That's, by the way, the beginning of creating a mediocre organization. Because what happened is that the top performing people, they would leave. They would leave because they have a choice and they don't want to be in a place that there is someone that does not fit and no one is doing anything about it. So disruption, and now I'm going to try something that I never did before on the stage, but I'm going to try that. So in reality, you look at all those, and I actually have T-shirts for each one of them. But when I speak about disruption, I'm going to change my T-shirt, and let's see if it works. So, we're getting to the second part of the presentation, which speaks about disruption and innovation and the role of cooperate, how to do the right innovation. Now, the most important thing, if you think about it, think about this, right? The opportunity is way bigger than the threat. And only then you might be able to basically say, okay, you know what, I'm willing to go into the unknown, into a new journey, that there is a lot of risk into that. Now, how to go into this journey is a different story. But let me start with disruption, right? In many cases, people will tell me, oh, this is a disruptive technology. And I would say, technology does not disrupt. Disruption is about changing behavior. It's about changing the market equilibrium, which could be a result of a new product, that the new product might be a result of a new technology. It could be a new price. If you have Gmail, raise your hand. Everyone, right? Gmail is 17 years old. That's it. Before that, we used to pay money in order to have a mailbox. We had the internet service provider providing us a service, access service that we paid for that, and additional money in order to have a mailbox. And then Google introduced Gmail. Now at the beginning it was not good enough, but they went through multiple iterations to make it good enough and free and win the market. No one can compete with that. It was a price differentiation, nothing else, right? Because if you have something that you are not necessarily pleased, or it's okay, and it costs you $5 or $10 a month, and someone will say, you know what, I have a better inbox and it's going to cost you the same, not enough incentive for you to switch. If someone will say, I have something for free, then you're willing to try that. So free is the biggest disruption of all. Maybe it's a new business model. So just think of, there are many cities around the globe that there are electric scooters on demand throughout the streets. Now, electric scooters are not new. The on-demand business model is the one that makes that unique. In some cases, very successful, some other cases less successful, but definitely a business model disruption. Maybe it's a new knowledge that change either the supply or the demand, and as a result, we have a new market equilibrium. Now, it's really, really important to remember the new market, if we are saying disruption is new market equilibrium, by definition, the new equilibrium is way better than before. Otherwise, the market will not go there. And the new market is way bigger than before. Think of Uber, right? So Uber is not that old, and when they started, it was pretty innovative approach. By the way, their disruption is because of knowledge. Both people and drivers knows where they are. And that actually creates the change. But you think about the market before Uber, and you think about the market today. Today there are 10 times more on-demand trips, 10 times more. In this 10 times more, there is room for Uber and Lyft and 99 Taxi and Didi and Grab, and 3 times more room for taxi drivers. So the market for taxi driver increased 3-fold because of Uber, even though the taxi drivers hate Uber. And if you would ask them in new country, they will say, no, don't let them in, right? There is no Uber in Israel, by the way, because the taxi driver is too strong for the regulator to basically say something about it. Now, disruptors are nearly always newcomers. They are the ones that have nothing to lose. Now, just think about it. If you have nothing to lose, then you're willing to take way higher risk, right? The worst case is that you're going to be exactly at the same situation that you are now today, right? You have nothing. So if you have nothing to lose, you are taking more risks, and part of taking more risks is that some of them are going to be successful. Now, for existing business to actually go and disrupt their own business, very hard, very hard. I use that because we occasionally ask ourselves, how can they not see that coming, right? How they cannot see the revolution coming? And think of Blockbuster and Netflix, right? Netflix actually approached Blockbuster and asked them to acquire them twice. And Blockbuster said no. Now Netflix became the leading video provider for a long period of time. Now they finally experience some competition. And Blockbuster completely disappeared, right? I heard recently that they still have a branch in Alaska, but maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. But obviously they haven't seen that coming. Now the most interesting part is that I heard what they said in the management meeting at Blockbuster after they meet Netflix. And what they said is, everything that they are doing, we can do better. The reality is that we cannot do better because we are not focused on what they're doing. We might have been done that better if we would have decided to do that, but we don't decide to do that. When iPhone was introduced, Steve Ballmer was the CEO of Microsoft, and Microsoft was at the position to become the market leader for the operating system for mobile phones, right? They had Windows Mobile that was running on Nokia, Motorola, Samsung, pretty much everyone, right? And they said, this will never work. Right? In other words, no one is going to buy a device at $500, right? Maybe a niche, but no one. Now we know what happened later, right? The reality is that no one turns out to be everyone. And Microsoft withdrawn for that market. They are not a relevant player for mobile operating systems. Digital camera. Who invented the digital camera? Kodak did, in their labs. And then they called the CEO and showed him the first digital camera in the world. And he said, shh, don't tell anyone. Now, the reality is that Kodak does not exist anymore, right? Obviously, the revolution was there. They were the first one to identify that this is going to be a revolution, and they were afraid of the change. Google and Yahoo. You know, Google, we don't think of Google as a company that ever struggled with anything, right? But they actually had a very hard time at the beginning, and they were unable to raise capital. And so they approached Yahoo and asked Yahoo to acquire them. And Yahoo asked them how much? And they say $2 million. Million, not billion, not trillion, 2 million. And Yahoo said no. Now you look at it today and you say, big mistake, right? We don't know that. We don't know what would have happened if they would have said yes. And this is why the decision that we are making, by the way, if you want someone that has definitely made a mistake, think of Apple, right? So we all know that Apple started by two founders, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, but they were actually a third one that had 9% of Apple at the beginning. And after a year, he said, I don't know what exactly I'm doing here. Why don't you buy my shares? 9% of Apple's $900. Where is that time machine that you promised us? Now, this is the most important part, because we need corporate innovation. We need corporate to go and change things in order not just for them to be better, for the world to be better. And the only way to think about it is if you realize that the opportunity is way bigger than the threat. Now, it's also very scary, right? So if I'm going to disrupt or if I'm going to make major changes, what's going to happen to me? There are ways to do that. By the way, corporate do not disrupt their own market, not necessarily for the right reasons. In many cases, look, in order to disrupt, you need to start by saying what we are currently doing is wrong. Now, as an individual, even if you are alone in the room and there is no one else hearing you, even then it's hard to say that. But for a corporate, you need the entire corporate to follow the fact that everything that we are currently doing is wrong. Very hard call, very hard change to make. Now, if you look at disruption, then obviously, in time scale, you think about 15 years ago, we mentioned that no iPhones, no everything that was on the iPhone. The future, we don't know what's in the future. For a second, I would say, Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, used to say that we are overestimating the near future and underestimating the far future. Because between now and the far future, 10 years is far future, right? There are revolutions that we don't see. If we would see those revolutions, we will actually go and build them, but we don't see them. Israel is a small place. We used to have a lot of challenges. One of them was that we did not have enough drinking water. We actually built systems that takes the seawater and actually make them drinking water. We not only that we have enough today, we actually export water to Jordan and to other countries around us. Because we can make any amount of water, just now you convert energy into water, but at the end of the day, the issue is that you overcome the issue. You cannot think about it at the beginning. Only once you start this journey and then end up successful, then you revolutionize everything. You revolutionize the way that people think. And water is no longer a problem in Israel. They might be autonomous vehicles, they might be robot doctors, they might be, think of the change that we don't need, right? We don't need ways anymore if there are autonomous vehicles. We will be sitting in the back seat and we don't care. In fact, when we started Waze, we actually had a map of the world based on two factors, right? Severity of traffic jams and number of smartphones, right? Because we needed a smartphone as the device. And at the beginning, there was correlation, US was number one and so forth, and India had very severe traffic jams, but not enough smartphones. But that actually changed very fast. And then we said, okay, we have to go to India because of the size of the market. And so we went to India, and turns out that people don't care. At the time, 2011, if you had a smartphone, you also had a driver. And you were sitting in the back seat and you don't care. And that might be the case for Waze. It will become irrelevant. Waze is an application for drivers. If there are no drivers, then we don't care. And this is a really excellent example, right? So think of the autonomous vehicles revolution. Now, I know that people are speaking about autonomous vehicles in the last 7 years, and essentially nothing happened. It will take longer, but the value is there, and eventually it will be figured out. But if you think of this industry, then in the last 100 years, nothing have changed. 100 years ago, the most sellable car in America was Ford, and it was black, and it was doing about 16 miles per gallon. And last year, it was Ford, and it was black, and it was doing about 17 miles per gallon. F-150, by the way, last year. But in reality, nothing have changed, right? You have a car, you drive the same way that your parents did. You go to the driver's seat, you have a steering wheel, you have pedals, and you drive the car yourself. The same way that our parents did. Now, if there are autonomous vehicles, just imagine that I have this clicker, and I click here, and the car shows up, and I tell the car takes me wherever, and then I click here, and the car disappears. I don't need to own a car. I need to own a clicker. And maybe I will have a big clicker for big car and a red clicker for red car. But essentially, I don't need to own a car. Now, the result is going to be that the number of cars sold is going to be way lower. The number of kilometers driven is going to be way higher because it's now affordable to everyone. If you're a car maker and you don't see this change that you need to switch from selling vehicles to selling service, you will die. By the way, this is a business model disruption, right? We are not going to buy cars, we are going to buy a service. If you have parking lot, you want to think about something else to do with the land. If you're selling car insurance that is based on per vehicle and not per kilometer, you will die. If you have driving school, you will die anyhow. The next generation, they will not drive. Generation after that, if we will tell them that we used to drive cars ourselves, they will not believe us. Now it seems odd, right? When I was young, one day I asked my dad to drive me to school. I was like second or third grade, right? So elementary school. And he said, this is 400 meters away. You walk there every day, walk. And I was asking him again and so forth, and he said, when I was your age, I was riding donkey to school. And I did not believe him. We used to have a driver for the elevators. We don't have that driver anymore, right? So world will be changed. There are a lot of derivatives of that, right? So wait a minute. Do we really need physical stores? What if we have moving stores? Because the price of them moving is going to be way cheaper than renting a place. There might be other derivatives of revolutions coming out of that. But the most important part is that when we realize that disruption is actually going to be on the business model, then a lot of things are going to change therefore. Now, the corporate innovation actually have very strong limitations that prevents most of the innovations from happening. Right? So the first one is we have to believe, we have to think, we have to know that the opportunity is greater than the threat. But there are a lot of ego issues, a lot of DNA issues. In many cases, look, entrepreneurs are troublemakers. I was fired for every place that I worked before because I am a troublemaker, right? In most cases, the corporates already got rid of the entrepreneurs. They don't have those people that can take something from scratch and go through the walls anymore. We need not to fire them. We need to make sure that we actually have something to do with them. It's an issue of the ego, right? Look, just think that you are a CEO of a corporate and you tell yourself, we are going to build this new division that is going to do innovative stuff, and the new innovative stuff is going to be bigger than the existing business, right? Are you going to tell that to everyone that is running the business right now? So this is the new stuff and it's more important than yours? Very challenging how to manage that. One of the biggest issues of corporates is that they don't see the duration of the journey. And if they're going to start something new, let's say that they're building a new team, new division, new department, whatever, that is going to do something completely new, this is going to be 10 years. 10 years of journey for that to become successful, to become impactful, to become significant. Right? During these 10 years, I promise you that this corporate will run into challenges, period. Right? And the board will ask, okay, this department here is bleeding cash. Why don't we shut it down? Very likely to happen. Actually, in most cases, that will be the immediate behavior of corporate, that if they need to reduce cost, if they need to, if there are pressures on price pressure or market pressure or whatever, and they need to improve on profitability, they will get rid of the cost centers. And innovation is a cost center. So the commitment needs to be there for the duration of the journey, because if it's not there, it will die sooner or later. In some cases, I have the corporate venture capital firm or corporate VC that is actually responsible for innovation. And I think that their investment thesis is completely wrong. Because they're basically saying, you know what, we don't know how to innovate, so we are going to invest in a startup or in a company that is going to build a product and we are going to sell that. The point of view that they have is of the current business line. The one that is actually calling the shots, usually it's not the corporate VC, it's the business line head that is saying, I'm going to sell this product. Now, the business line is selling a mature product today. Selling a premature product, they don't know how. And they don't want to get embarrassed for a small deal with the existing customers. So the challenge is that at the end of the day, they are investing in a startup, and the thesis is that, okay, this startup is going to build a product and we are going to sell that. They are not committed to the journey. The journey is going to be long, and it's going to be small at the beginning. And again, the issue is corporate is not going to risk their own business. And going and selling a non-working product to a customer is risking their own business. If I would be a salesperson and I have very good relationship with my customer and someone will tell me, go and sell them this new product, I would say, yes, of course, but I wouldn't do anything. I will not risk my relationship with the customer bringing them something that other people did not try before. So obviously corporate VC have no disruption line of sight, and in fact, they're thinking of as a product development without the commitment of the business line to sell those. And when I think about corporate innovation, I want every corporate in their management to ask 2 questions once a year or twice a year, right? The first questions, what will make us irrelevant? 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, right? Now, if you can answer that question, there is someone else that can answer that question as well. And that someone else is already building something that will make you irrelevant. And if you ignore that, by the time that they will be successful, it's way too late for you. This is Blockbuster and Netflix. This is Microsoft and Apple. This is Yahoo and Google, right? It's going to be too late for you because they are already successful. And actually what you need to do is invest. Invest in those startups that are basically saying their thesis is they are going to disrupt their market, and you actually think that this market can be disrupted this way. If you think so, you have to invest in them. The other question that you want to ask yourself is, what assets do I have that if I can use them completely differently, I can actually build a bigger business than my own business. Now, a lot of corporates actually don't even understand what their real assets are. We usually would like to answer the 2 immediate questions, our customers, our employees. Maybe. But these are obvious. Are there some that are not? Something that is significant? So, if you are Coca-Cola, then obviously you have brand name awareness and you have a product that is sellable way above. So at the end of the day, water with sugar and some other ingredients, but at the end of the day, definitely a very sellable product. But they also have distribution channels. Their trucks are going everywhere. They're reaching every small place in the world. In fact, in reality, they have a point of sale that is selling Coca-Cola for every 200 people in average in Mexico, right? So there are 120 million people in Mexico, and for every 200 there is a point of sale. Could be a kiosk, a supermarket, a restaurant, whatever, that is selling Coca-Cola products. They can replace the Mexican postal services easily. They go everywhere. That might be bigger business than selling Coca-Cola or just selling Coca-Cola. So what is it that they need to do? Either invest or spin off someone that is going to do either the disruption or the better utilizations or the different utilizations of the assets. One of the biggest issues is that we need, in a corporate, we need to change the DNA. what leads the behavior of many of the corporates today is fear of failure. People are afraid to fail. Now, if we want them to try new things, we also have to remember that by trying new things, that means that they are going to experience failures. The behavior needs to be that we encourage failures and not punish for failures, right? So if someone tries something new and they fail, and we fire them, we just send a message to the rest of the organizations, don't you dare to try something new. Because if you will fail, we will fire you. Now, this has to come from the top. If it doesn't come from the top, then obviously the rest of the organization will never believe that we should fail. Accepting the nonconformist, so these are the troublemakers, right? They are way more creative than most of the other peoples, right? They will not accept no, or they will not accept this is how things are being done. They will go and try to figure out the different ways to do that. My longest career path was at Converse. I was there for 11 years. Converse was the voicemail system, so we used to have one. And by the way, Telcel, right there, was a customer of Converse, and Telmex was a customer of Converse, and all the mobile operators, nearly all the mobile operators in the world were customers of the voicemail. And I was there from 1989 until 2000. And I was fired because I was a troublemaker, right? Now, a few months later, the CEO came to me and said, I don't understand how we let you go. And I say, you didn't let me go, you fired me. We have to figure out what to do with the nonconformist. They are the one that actually bring the innovation, and they are the one that bring the thinking out of the box into the organization. And if we see them as troublemakers, we will fire them. If we see the opportunity in them, then we need to make sure that we are maintaining that opportunity. And obviously at the same time, I would say we need to accept the nonconformist. Don't accept the victims and the drama queens. They are poison to any organization, and they don't bring any value. And understanding that the journey is long. It's a long journey. And you need to commit to this journey from the beginning, and you can commit through two different ways, right? Because if you invest in a startup, you easily can say, you know what, next year I'm not participating in the next funding round, and my shares are going to be diluted. My position in this new company is going to be diluted, and I'm okay with that. And maybe a year later, then we have plenty of cash on the balance sheet, and we say, you know what, we are going to invest. So this gives you the opportunity to actually decide how much control you want, and when is it that you are giving up on keep on funding the bleeding startup, because startup is a bleeding machine for a long period of time until they become profitable. So a few words about myself. It's a thinner version of me there. And I'm building startups. I'm not going to speak about my startups, but I have, each one of them is trying to solve a single problem. And hopefully all of them are going to be successful. Realization check, not all of them are going to be successful. But I want to speak a few words about my book. And I told you earlier that I really like to speak in front of audience. COVID, there was no place that you can speak in front of audience, so I actually had some extra time and I wrote my book. And my book is fulfilling my destiny as sharing what I know with other people in order to increase their likelihood of being successful. By the way, Steve Wozniak wrote the foreword to my book, and he told me, look, I wish I had that when I started. So obviously there was something there that for him was valuable. But I want to speak about few of the chapters there. And I do realize that we are running out of time, and for a second I would say usually I don't care about the schedule. I told you I'm a troublemaker, right? So that's the problem of the organizers, not mine. But it will be 5 more minutes or so. So one of the chapters is called Firing and Hiring. And when I wrote that, the publisher told me it is hiring and firing, right? And I said, no, it's firing and hiring. Firing is hard decision. Hiring is easy decision. This is why it needs to start with firing. By the way, this chapter, the first 10 pages is about firing. And then the rest is about hiring. And the important part, and you know, if you want to take one thing away from today, take the following, right? We mentioned earlier a lot of entrepreneurs told me that they failed because the team was not right. Make yourself a new rule. Every new hire that brings into the company, a month later, 30 days later, ask yourself one question. Knowing what I know today, would I hire this guy? Now, if the answer is yes, then obviously you should keep this guy and maybe do something, tell this guy that you are extremely pleased with their performance, or give them a raise or something that indicates that the fact that you are happy. But if the answer is no, fire them immediately. And the reason is that if you think that you shouldn't have hired them, everyone else in their team already know that. Everyone else know that. Now, if you don't take the right action, your problem is not with this particular person. Your problem is with the rest of the team that knows that this person shouldn't be there and is still there. Knowing what I know today, would I hire this guy? Actually, take that to life, right? Knowing what I know today, would I do something different with anything? Now, if the answer is yes, then do something different today. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. The sample of one. When a few years back, I think 2015, I was speaking at a conference in Guatemala. And together with me, Steve Wozniak was speaking about innovation as well, and we had dinner the night before. And I took a selfie with him. Now, I had an iPhone, so obviously if I would have something else, I wouldn't even pull that out of my pocket. And we were standing like that, and I took a selfie by clicking on the side button of the iPhone. On the iPhone, you can take pictures in 2 different ways, right? So one of them, and by the way, I'm going to take a picture of the audience, is you click on this one, right? The other one is that you actually click on the side, on the volume button. Not a lot of people know that, but you can do that, and it's taking pictures the same way. And now I'm going to take a selfie. For selfie, it's much easier, because this is how you hold your phone, and you click right here. So this is exactly what I was doing with Steve Wozniak, and he said, finally. I said, finally what? He said, finally, someone using it the way that I meant it to be. Now, when you think about it, the iPhone came from a generation of digital cameras, right? This is how you take picture on a digital camera, right? You click right here. And this is what he had in his mind. There is no right or wrong. We are using products in a way that is unique to us. There are probably other people that are using it the same way, but there are other people that are using it differently. And we cannot even imagine that. We cannot even imagine that there are other people that are not like us. So we are an amazing sample of one person. Now, if you want your product to work, go and watch other people using it. Because only then you will see other kind of people, other types of users using it differently. And you can ask them why. And then you would know. And this is really critical to understand that not all the users are the same. And what your own perspective is one person perspective. Business models, so I wrote the book in English, and I had a lot of help because at the end of the day, English is not my mother tongue. And then I thought that I'm going to make an audiobook, and I'm going to read out loud the book, right? And I like my voice, and a lot of people told me that they like my voice, and so I thought it's going to be a good idea. And I tried that, and ended up that it's not good enough, and eventually there will be someone else. It's not good enough for the target audience, right? And the target audience of the English book or the English audiobook is for English-speaking people, right? There will be one in Spanish, by the way. And I was disappointed with the fact that it's not good enough, but ended up that I will follow my users and my customers. And if they think it's not good enough, I'm not going to insist. So what I'm saying is that I can spend the rest of the day here telling you about the different chapters of the book and telling you stories and so forth, but just touching one more thing maybe in the business model. Any CPAs in the room, accountant in the room? Okay, and you don't have to be embarrassed, right? So why do accountants celebrate birthday? Because this is what we did last year. The same for business model. Nearly everyone that came with a business model, they came with the approach, this is what we did before. And if it worked before, then it should be working this time as well. Maybe. In many cases, the business model is a derivative of the value that we bring. Now, a lot of people struggle with that, but in general, I would say, if you bring value of X to your customer, you will end up with getting somewhere between 10 to 25% of X. That's it. And the most simplified business model is the one that is associated with the value. I'm going to generate you X value, and I'm going to take a part of it. On the selling pitch, it's the easiest. By the way, not always, right? Because, one of my companies, Fairfly, dealing with the biggest secret in travel industry, and this is what happened to airfare after you book your flight. Now, you don't know. No one is comparing prices after they make the reservation. But prices of airfare are going up and down all the time. They're going up and down before you're making the reservation, and they keep on going up and down after you're making the reservation. So if this is the price that you paid, and this is cancellation fees, if price is here, you're leaving money on the table. Now, I don't like to leave money on the table. And so what Fairfly does is monitor your own itinerary, and if the price drops, you can rebook the same flight at a cheaper price. Now, you think about it from a user, but from a corporate, we can save corporate 10% of their travel budget that goes directly to the bottom line. Now, when we sell that to corporates, we basically sell them, we save you X, we get 25% of that. What's the big deal? Everyone will say yes, except CFOs that will come back and say, so what you're telling me is that I don't know what the bill or what the invoice for next month is going to be. And I say, exactly. Say, no, give us flat fee. Now, it's going to be exactly the same amount of money, but in a different model. So business model, we think that we can create one. We can't. It's a derivative of the value that we generate. And therefore, we should always be focusing on the value that we generate. So one more story, and then we're actually going to have a Q&A session. I mentioned earlier that a lot of people came to me throughout the journey and years later and telling me, you have no idea what Waze did for me, right? And in many cases, I actually have. But occasionally, I do hear a very unique story. And someone came to me a few years back and say, thank you, you saved my marriage. And I said, what? I said, well, because of Waze, we don't argue anymore in the car, so you saved my marriage. So I ended up to be a marriage consultant. But I think that I owe the best story to my son. I have 5 kids, and one of them today is 24 years old, running his own business. But when he started to drive some 7 or 8 years ago, he really liked to drive. If he would need to go to the other side of the auditorium, he would actually drive there. So one day I asked him to drive me to the airport. And he said, my phone is broken, I can't. I said, okay, what do you mean you can't? The car is right here, and here are the keys, drive me to the airport. Say, Dad, no, Dad, you don't understand, my phone is broken. I don't know how to get there. So I was scratching my head for a second, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna be in the car with you, and I will tell you how to get there. And then he asked me, and how would I come back? We lose orientation, but not logic. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri.
Thank you.
Now, your troublemaking status means we don't have a lot of time for Q&A, but we'll try and do a couple before we finish.
Cool. I'm going to sit over
let's,
there.
Head over here. So thank you, everyone, for your questions. As I say, we don't have a lot of time. I know Yuri going to be in the VIP lunch afterwards as well, so all our VIPs are going to have the chance to ask a few questions there as well. I think as what I'd like to do is just ask a couple of sort of related questions, if you like, that have come in. Not necessarily directly with the specific things you were talking about, but more generally around creativity and what we can do to foster creativity. This one from Susanna asks about what we should be doing to help the next generation, our children, to be more creative, to be more entrepreneurial, if that's something we should be encouraging, if there are ways to do that.
Of course there are. You know, we actually develop fear of failures in our children because we don't accept their failures. And the most important thing that we can teach them is actually being successful is a journey of failures, right? And so it's okay to fail, it's okay to try new things. Don't be afraid to try new things. And we are actually going to encourage you trying new things regardless of the results. Because at the end of the day, fear of failure is mainly developed at home. And then it's becoming part of the DNA of the culture of a company, of a society, of a country, and so forth. But if we accept failures from our kids, then we are definitely in a pretty good shape. And we encourage them to try new things, and we don't judge them for failing, then we are making leapfrogs in their ability to try new things in the future. One of my kids, he was pretty brilliant, and when it was last year of high school, I asked him what's his plan to do in the math exam, and he said, I'm going to do A. And I told him, you know that you can do A+. And he said, I know I can, but for A+, I need to spend the entire week learning, and for A, I can go and celebrate the entire week, and the trade-off looks right to me. And I actually liked that answer. And I felt that I was successful in guiding him.
Yeah. What has been your biggest failure? And the question from Adriana, and what did you learn from it?
Give me a chance, I'll have bigger failures in the future. I shut down several companies because they were unsuccessful. Those that I hate the most is that it didn't work out with the other founders. Okay. And the CEO was not the right one, and I decided to leave instead of changing the CEO. And I hated that because, and the biggest issue is that I ask myself, would I know next time? And the answer is no, I wouldn't.
So it's actually learn for the future. It's difficult. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't necessarily change your behavior.
You wouldn't necessarily know when you are when you think that you start the journey with people that looks like one thing, and then they evolve or you evolve, and all of a sudden you are not the same anymore, and that part you wouldn't know.
Yeah. There's a question here from, I think it's from Jorge. He asks, what can you do to sort of reinvigorate your creativity when you're sort of in your over 50, he was saying?
Sorry, say that again.
So he's asking, what can you do to become disruptive once again, to become creative once again when you're in your 50s? It sounds as though, this is actually it's from Edgar, sorry. He's saying, what can I do to become more disruptive again?
Start your own business. Start your own business. You will find out how you will figure out creativity. You're actually going to bring your experience and with the need of creativity in order to be successful. And this is going to be a very successful, very fulfilling journey for you, and hopefully very successful as well.
Jorge asks, what do you do to bring your team along with you on the journey? You talked about the importance of you're being disruptive. That's often very difficult for people that have been in positions for a while, and actually motivating that change with the team. How can you bring the team with you?
With the vision and the mission, they will follow. Look, at the end of the day, if you have a concept that you're going to build something new, and you share that with more and more and more people, then people will start to believe in the mission. And in particular, they would believe in you, that you can lead this mission. And they will follow.
Super, excellent. And then one last question here, Yuri, before we close. This one from Julio. He says, would Apple be Apple if Steve Jobs was born in Mexico? Would Waze be Waze if not started in a technology advanced country such as Israel and later acquired by Google and grown in ecosystems such as the US? How do you foster entrepreneurial ecosystems within specific countries, and countries like Mexico, I think he's probably referring to?
So obviously ratio between startups and population in Israel is way higher than any other place around the globe. But there are a few factors that can encourage that in multiple countries, right? In Latin America in general, and in Mexico as well, fear of failure is actually an issue, a major issue. People are afraid to fail. And if they would fail, they would become losers, and no one will want to deal with them anymore. So let me start by saying that second-time entrepreneurs have 5 times higher likelihood of being successful, regardless if they were successful or failed on the first time. The experience is the one that actually increased the likelihood of being successful. But as a society, if we want to have more startups, more entrepreneurs here in Mexico, then we need to do 3 things. One is role of the media to encourage entrepreneurs and basically say entrepreneurs are heroes. Mm-hmm. They are heroes because they're trying to change the world. Mm-hmm. And some of them will be successful and some of them will fail, but they're still heroes. Number 2, we need to change the regulation in 2 levels, right? So, if you invest in my startup in Israel and the startup is successful, then you are not paying taxes in Israel. You're paying taxes wherever you're paying taxes. If the startup fails, you have no liability in Israel. Now, if I invest in a startup in Brazil and the startup is successful, I need to pay taxes in Brazil. Now, I live in Israel. I want to pay taxes where I live, not where I don't live. And if the startup failed, then I'm actually liable to the damages that might happen to other investors as well. So obviously, I don't want to invest in a startup in Brazil. So encouraging investors through regulations to invest is the second part, right? So fear of failure. Eventually, there are a lot of people that entrepreneurs will start their journey if their passion is greater than the fear of failure and the opportunity cost. So if this is way bigger than this, they would go into this journey. One of the ways to increase that is you basically say, you know what, I'm lower the fear of failure, the general fear of failure, and therefore I'm going to have more entrepreneurs. The second part in the equation is investors. Right? If we don't have the regulations that encourage investors to come and invest in Mexico, they will not come. For them, it's an easy game, right? They are following the money, and they don't like to pay taxes. And the third element, in particular for technology innovation, is engineers. How many engineers in the room? Actually, quite a lot. Occasionally, I go to places like that, and there are 3 engineers in the room. We need more engineers. That's it. Now, we can actually do 2 things in order to have more engineers. We can encourage more young people to go and study engineering, which, by the way, some of the schools here in Mexico are absolutely amazing, right? Or we can bring engineers from other places in Latin America, or from India, or Pakistan, or wherever. Ukraine is actually a very good place to bring engineers today. Right. But we need more engineers. Now, what happened, and I think that we have seen that, Guadalajara was actually a very good place for entrepreneurs for a little while. And then a lot of American corporates came in and suck up all the engineers, paying them 2 or 3 times more than what they were making before, and dried out the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Guadalajara.
Very interesting. Yuri, thank you for that. I think it was very insightful thoughts on what Mexico needs to be doing to encourage more entrepreneurship, and a great session overall. We have run out of time. We've gone a little bit over time, actually, but that's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, Yuri Levine.
Thank you.